On November 26, 1930, a news story titled Village of the Dead was published on the front page of Canada's The Medicine Daily Journal newspaper. This story sent a wave of terror throughout Canada because an entire tribe in northern Canada had vanished overnight without a trace. In the remote areas of northern Canada, here lies Anjikuni Lake, by whose shores a small settlement of the Eskimo tribe lived. This tribe, consisting of about 100 to 150 people, subsisted by fishing in this lake. This area in northern Canada, where not thousands but millions of square kilometers are sparsely populated with only a few thousand inhabitants, is characterized by its extremely harsh climate. Apart from fishing in Anjikuni Lake, hunting of other animals also takes place in the surrounding areas, attracting many hunters to this region. It was a particularly cold day in November 1930 when a hunter named Joe LaBelle came to this area for hunting. He became so engrossed in hunting that he didn't notice when it got dark. He had an idea to spend the night with the Eskimo tribe by the shore of Lake Anjikuni, as he had done before. This tribe was well known for welcoming outsiders. He packed his belongings and started walking towards the Eskimo area. It was a moonlit night, but there was complete silence everywhere. Not a single person was visible, nor could any voices be heard. He could only hear the sound of his own footsteps. Although Joe had done this before, usually by this time, he would start hearing the so-ons of sled dogs that the villagers kept. But on this day, even as he approached the village, there was only desolation and silence. Feeling this, Joe quickened his pace, thinking perhaps the villagers were asleep or had gone somewhere else. From a distance, he could see the chimneys in the village with smoke rising from them. But as he got closer, he still couldn't hear anyone. Finally, when Joe LaBelle entered the village, he was astonished to find that there were no people or animals around. What surprised him was that smoke was rising from some houses, as if someone was inside. He went into a tent at random, but there was no one there. And the same was true for all the tents. Joe might have ignored the entire scene and left, but one thing troubled him even more. In some houses, cooking pots were found on the stoves, but the food in them was burnt. This meant that someone had prepared food for the night, but hadn't eaten it. Even the women's sewing work, which was usually found in the village, was left undone. The clothes were also present there, and a needle was threaded. It seemed as if the people of the village had suddenly left. But where did they go? Joe LaBelle began searching the entire village. He saw that the dogs, which the tribe had kept, were tied with ropes, but they had died of hunger. Even though there was food in front of the dogs, there was no human to feed them. He found a freshly dug grave at one place. Seeing this grave, it seemed like it hadn't been dug long ago. Witnessing all this, Joe LaBelle's worry and fear had greatly increased. He was quite frightened by seeing all this alone at night. When people here go anywhere, they always take their dogs with them, but seeing all this, it seemed as if something strange had happened. Some calamity had forced the people to suddenly leave, so urgently that they even left their dogs behind, couldn't put out the food and the burning fire. Joe couldn't bear to see all this for long, and quickly reached the nearest telegraph office. From there, he contacted the camps of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and described everything he had seen. When the police arrived at the village, what Joe LaBelle had described was found to be true. The police suspected that perhaps an attack had been made here, and all the villagers had been killed. But if that were the case, there would have been blood somewhere in the village. The signs of violence would have scattered some items. The police immediately initiated a search operation to find the villagers. During this search operation, a very unique thing was observed, which Joe had not noticed. The entire village was covered in snow, but there were no footprints on the snow except for those of one person, and those were Joe LaBelle's own. This meant that if no one other than Joe had come to or left the village, then where did the villagers go? The lake was also frozen over, and the villagers' boats were on land, as fishing does not take place in this season, and the boats are pulled ashore and parked. If the villagers had swum across the lake, or if someone had killed them and thrown them into the lake, then the layer of ice on the lake would have been broken or disturbed somewhere. The police investigation also revealed that these people had disappeared 2 days before Joe arrived, because dogs do not die from starvation in just a day or two. And the smoke coming out of the houses was a sign that not much time had passed since they had left. This was because the smoke would continue to emit for quite some time even after the wood had burned out. The police were faced with numerous questions, but had no answers. After several months of the search operation, the police finally declared the case unsolved and closed it forever. With time, people also forgot about it. 50 years later, in 1984, writers Roger Bohr and Nigel Blundell wrote an article and attempted to link this entire matter to aliens. In their article, they mentioned that when they were exploring this area around Anjikuni Lake, when they approached, they encountered a hunter and his 2 sons. The hunter explained that he had often seen objects flying above the lake, with varying shapes, heading towards the village where the Eskimo tribe resided. Constructing a story based on this, it was suggested that perhaps aliens had landed that night, taking all the people in the village with them. However, these writers had no solid evidence for the presence of aliens or their attack, so most people did not believe this theory. Subsequently, many people started creating various fictional stories about the disappearance of the Eskimo tribe. However, the reality is that this incident is 100 years old, and to this day, no one has the answer to the question of where the people of Anjikuni Lake's village went without leaving any traces. The case of the Eskimo tribe's disappearance remains a mystery, and even today, it is an unsolved enigma. We hope that you will like and share this video. Thank you for your love-filled comments. See you in the next fantastic video.